Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A very good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. On behalf of the organizers, the General Council for Islamic Banks and Financial Institutions, the Association of the Mediterranean Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and the Barcelona Chamber of Commerce, I have the pleasure and honor of welcoming all of you to this 6th Mediterranean Islamic Finance Forum, themed Islamic Finance in the Post-COVID-19 Era, a pathway for economic development and resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, the 6th Mediterranean Islamic Finance Forum has gathered us all today to take advantage of the high growth prospects of Islamic finance across the Mediterranean, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and to also to discuss key topics to address the main challenges for the effective adoption of Islamic finance within these regions. The forum will offer a unique networking opportunity for regulators, industry practitioners, business leaders, and Sharia scholars to share their views and experience, and will also focus on some of the more contemporary areas regionally as well as globally. This 6th edition is also unique as it aims to examine the Islamic financial services industry and the opportunities it's present in the post-COVID-19 period. Ladies and gentlemen, to start off the forum, I have the pleasure to call upon Dr. Abdullah Bellatik, Secretary General of CBAFI, to deliver his welcoming remarks. Dr. Bellatik, the cloud is yours.
Thank you, Mohammed. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala maulana rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you are. It's a great pleasure to be here again and to welcome you on behalf of CBAFI to this 6th Mediterranean Islamic Finance Forum, taking place virtually. And we hope that this will be the last one we'll be having virtually, and the next time we'll have opportunity to have a live again. Barcelona is a very great place, and we always enjoy attending this event in that nice place and meeting with our colleagues and friends in the Mediterranean region in the framework of the Mediterranean Week of economic leaders. Of course, I think that we are going on our way out of the pandemic, and this showed us the importance of various issues. I think on the global agenda now, we have all issues related to sustainability, which started before but has been accelerated now. In particular, I would like to mention something very important is climate change, which with implications and direct implications on the financial sector. Many regulators, and I think even the Basel Committee just a few days ago issued a document on exposure drafts on managing the climate change financial risks. And this will really just start of the work of the regulatory base on this issue. So we will be seeing in the next few years significant changes, and will impact the business of the financial sector and the Islamic banks as well. So innovations is the second high topic, which we have seen. I think we were pleased to see that Islamic banks for the last 18 months, with the impact of COVID and the curfews that were happening and the closing of everything, that Islamic banks, they were resilient again, and they accelerated the innovations and digitalization to reach their customers. It showed again, the unique specificities and perhaps the resilience of the Islamic banks in tackling the issues and tackling, issues of high relevance and importance as the pandemic. So I will not be long. I wanted just to say this few words, which will set the scene for our discussion today. We have a very high-level discussion, a distinguished panel of speakers, which will share with us their views on Islamic finance in general, impact of COVID-19 and impact on the Mediterranean region. I would like on your behalf to thank them warmly for joining us for this event once again, to share with us their expertise and highlight to us, I mean, this important agenda for the Islamic banks globally. To give the floor, I would like to welcome our friend and colleague Aiman Sejini from the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, which will be sharing with us some insights on the work of ICD is doing and the way ahead for the forward for the Islamic banking and Islamic finance industry. So once again, thank you very much for joining us to this event, and hopefully next one we will be seeing you live in presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bellatik. Ladies and gentlemen, may I also direct your attention, and I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Aiman Sejini, Chief Executive Officer, Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, to deliver his keynote address.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. On behalf of the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, the private sector arm of the Islamic Development Bank Group, ISDB Group, I would like to extend my utmost appreciation to the organizers of this forum, namely the General Counsel for the Islamic Bank and Financial Institution, SIBAFI, and the Association of the Mediterranean Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ASCOM, for the opportunity to speak today. It is indeed an honor to be granted this unique opportunity to address all of you in today's forum and to share with you some points of view. As we are all aware, the economic shock of COVID-19 pandemic has been unprecedented in both its complexity and severity. The fear of the pandemic not only caused distribution and disruption in production. The fear of the pandemic not only caused disruption in production, but also affected supply chain, trade, and job sustainability in all levels of businesses and industries. The magnitude of the COVID-19 impact became more apparent. Accordingly, we need to think about ways in which we can formulate transformative pathways to build back better and reshape the world. In this regard, to achieve the sustainable development, it will require a realignment of the global economy and financial system, as well as the impactful investments which focus on the serving the need of inclusive, environmentally sustainable economic development. This is, in fact, the root of Islamic finance. As an alternative type of funding, Islamic finance and its inherent characteristic lend themselves well to facilitating and promoting the sustainable development, such as the risk-sharing modes of financing that promotes assets and enterprises and the close link with the real economy. Ladies and gentlemen, Islamic finance has demonstrated its competitiveness and resilience during the global financial crisis period. In the past 13 years, with two-digit growth, the industry is now entering into an environment that is fundamentally different in the past of COVID-19 crisis era. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a game changer for the Islamic finance industry. Islamic financial institutions spent most of year 2020 coping with the dual shock of adjusting to the pandemic with low and slow, volatile, fragile economies. It is important to mention that the pandemic has led to growth in some areas of industries, as some regulators turned to Islamic finance to mitigate the economic impact. For example, we are seeing countries such as Pakistan, Indonesia, and Malaysia issuing sukuk for budget deficits, refinancing, and for sustainable development projects. Multilateral, the ISDB raised $1.5 billion with its first ever sustainable sukuk to help in the recovery from COVID-19 in its member countries. Indeed, In terms of battling the effect of COVID-19, Islamic finance has innovative tools which can be deployed for each stage of the pandemic response. For example, emergency support in the short term can be solved with zakah. Donors typically require zakah to be dispersed immediately. This focus on immediate benefit is well suited for crisis response and support both the poor and the economically insecure and areas of increased need in the pandemic. For long-term recovery and resilience, many sovereigns saw the opportunity to raise funds via Sukuk issuance to finance large budget needs on the back of COVID-19 stimulus package and economic recovery program. Other redistributive instruments such as Sadaqah, Qard al-Hasan, and Waqf play a significant role in reducing the impact on the most vulnerable segments of the population that have been impacted severely by the COVID-19 pandemics. Overall, Islamic finance tools can indeed create an enable environment for resilient economic and social development and address the need to drive improvements in sustainable efforts. Distinguished guests, today Islamic finance is not only confined to Muslim majority citizen countries as it did once before. Beyond its traditional sphere, the industry has found firm footing in new jurisdictions such as the Mediterranean countries, the US, the Far East, and Sub-Saharan Africa. With growing interest and increased consumer and investor demand for Sharia compliant and ethical products, the time is right to capitalize on Islamic finance opportunities in order to not be left behind. New growth sectors, such as Islamic Fintech, will boost the potential reach and impact of the Islamic financial service. For example, Islamic financial institutions can build digital-only banking and capital markets to cater to the digital demographic, and artificial intelligence and big data analytics can be used for customer-based targeting. In addition, cross-border trade and financing can also be facilitated through peer-to-peer lending, trade financing. Islamic fintech solutions can also address financial inclusion gaps by driving solutions for SMEs and unbanked retail users, as well as reducing the cost of services. Ladies and gentlemen, overall Islamic finance possesses massive potential to offer solutions to public and private sectors alike, to strengthen sustainable development in economics, which is especially relevant to post-COVID-19 era. I'm proud to state that ICD has also made significant strides in development of Islamic finance industry through billions of approvals since its inception. And today, we remain committed to several industry building initiatives. At ICD, we are also actively contributing to the development of Islamic finance industry of our member countries through our advisory and technical assistance program, such as our IFI, Sukuk Advisory, Green and Blue Sukuks, as well as IBES program. Moving forward, we are excited to continue to play a significant role in enlarging Islamic finance globally and taking care of the footprint. Thank you once again for having me today, and I look forward to learning more about Islamic finance development and its current landscape in the Mediterranean region, as well as gain of fresh perspectives. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sejini, for this insightful address. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we will now move to the panel discussion session of which I am also pleased to moderate. I have the pleasure to welcome and introducing our lineup of expert speakers for today. We have with us Mr. Ayad Asili, General Manager, Islamic International Arab Bank in Jordan, Mr. Nabil Kisrawi, Director General Zaytuna Tamkeen in Indonesia, Mr. Hassan Sami,
Tunisia.
Tunisia, yes. Mr. Hassan Sami, a Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Insha Ventures in Turkey. Mr. Gonzalo Rodriguez, a Director, Saudi Spanish Center for Islamic Economics and Finance in Spain, and Dr. Bridget Costain, a Research Fellow at Said Business School, University of Oxford, United Kingdom. I welcome all speakers to this session. Indeed, it is an honor to have you all today. So basically, our discussion for today's session is on a very important topic. As we know that the world is slowly and gradually coming out of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. And we have seen that economies are also opening up and people have also start resuming the travel. So at this point, we want to explore how Islamic finance will be like in the post-COVID-19 era and what role it can play to ensure that economic recovery is inclusive, sustainable, and resilient. And of course, our discussion will be focused on the Mediterranean region. So looking from a historical perspective, we know that in the last, say, 1 decade, Islamic finance industry was growing with double-digit figures. In 2019, we have seen that the industry showed us a growth rate of around 11%. But with COVID-19, the growth of the industry was slowed down in 2020. But the good thing is that we are expecting the growth will bounce back, and the total assets are also predicted to reach around $3.7 trillion by 2024. So today our objective is to basically share some of the thinking about how Islamic finance being the promoter of economic prosperity and human well-being and welfare could play a vital role in furthering economic development and also fostering prosperity in the Mediterranean, Europe, Middle East and African regions. And also that how the Mediterranean region in particular can leverage on these opportunities to gain the momentum of this global trend. So now to open our discussion, I would like to start with Dr. Bridget. Dr. Bridget, if you can please give us an overview of how do you see the development of Islamic finance industry in the Mediterranean region? And also, in your opinion, what is the role of Islamic finance in when we talk about developing key strategic sectors in the Mediterranean region? Please.
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this distinguished panel for a very timely discussion. What I think is most exciting about the possibilities for Islamic finance in the Mediterranean region is that so many countries in the region are extremely advanced with their economic attention being given to ESG topics, environment, social, and governance. And the reason why I'm a champion of Islamic finance and have been researching it for over a decade is precisely because these modern topics of ESG all have their antecedents in Islamic finance, but coming from very different perspectives. And so while ESG discussions are being in many ways restricted by a healthy debate around what constitutes appropriate measurements, appropriate metrics, appropriate ways of understanding impact, Islamic finance has long been engaged in a project of trying to figure out how to map products and services to the Maqasid al-Sharia, trying to understand what it means to fulfill the spirit of the law and not just the letter of the law, having to navigate complexity, having to navigate differences of juridical opinion in Sharia. And so all of this well positions this sector to assist the growth of ESG discussions, products and services, take a leading role, and in so doing raise its own public profile. I mean, there's an issue of branding, there's an issue of reputation, there's an issue of, as you were saying, as our keynote speaker was saying, not just being an industry that's seen as being beneficial for Muslims only, but as I believe, being an industry that is hugely beneficial for more just economic systems.
Thank you, Dr. Bridget. These are very interesting points, and especially the ESG part and sustainability and social aspect of that you have highlighted. And we will definitely come back to on those topics. But here, actually, I want to bring in Mr. Ayad into the discussion to have his perspective on the COVID-19 pandemic effects on the real economy, because we have seen that it has direct impact of all economic sectors. So also another thing is that which I want to ask to share his experience on the role of Islamic International Arab Bank in mitigating those effects through taking various initiatives. Mr. Ayad, please, the cloud is yours.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for this invitation, Askami, Sibafi, and the Chamber of Commerce of Barcelona. You know, it's a pity I have been participating in this forum for the last 3 years consecutively, but in person. It's a pity that we are unable to do it this year, but hopefully next year we'll be able to do it in person. Of course, it's no secret that the pandemic had its impact on the global economy. I mean, and Islamic finance was not any exception. And the biggest challenge has emanated from this has had to do with the lots of, first of all, employment has become a problem. People lost their jobs. And in the aftermath of this, you have something we are seeing now: soaring energy prices, raise the production, of course, of OPEX, cost of manufacturing, cost of transportation, heating, shipping crisis. Prices have seen major increase in shipping costs, and also rare earth metal shortages affecting supply volume. Many industries, high-tech industries such as smartphones, electric, hybrid vehicles, etc. This has been a very major problem that, in fact, we are foreseeing a problem in food. Apparently, we're seeing during the coming period, there could be a problem in supply of food. Of course, this is something, if we want to look at it in a gloomy way. And I wanted to also look at the Mediterranean, because I think this forum has to do with the Mediterranean area, and it's good to shed some light on it. You know, particularly with relating to Islamic finance. You know, Mediterranean Sea, still the most important access to huge economies, natural resources, and population. And Islamic finance played some role in the bilateral trade between Mediterranean countries and the other Islamic countries. Islamic banking has opportunities for expansion, and there are more than 50 Islamic financial institutions located in Turkey, France, and Spain. And that's why the focus continues to be on how such an industry, particularly Islamic finance, can grow more in the Mediterranean area. The statistic that I have here, the total assets of the northern and southern total of approximately $101 billion in 2020 in the Mediterranean area. Return on assets has dropped to 1.8%. The growth was low. The COVID-19 pandemic affected the global economy, the Mediterranean countries as well. In spite of the achieved growth in Islamic finance in 2020, which we saw some growth, although there was a pandemic area, but the average ROA decreased. The reason why there was growth, not because necessarily of the growth, actual growth, there was deferment. Deferment resulted in people unable to pay, and it resulted in impacting growth as well. Because if somebody doesn't pay, it piles up, and you have to, whatever additional asset you book, it piles up on an asset which has already been rescheduled. So I don't think the 2020 figures do reflect real growth in Islamic finance, in my view, because everybody knows that Islamic finance doesn't have interest added to the assets, and the rescheduling doesn't entail any interest. There are expectations for more growth of Islamic finance assets during 2021 and upcoming years as global economy recovery after the pandemic, hopefully. This is just an overview because about the Mediterranean, but I want to look at our experience, the case study of the Islamic finance. Our bank is called the Islamic International Arab Bank. Before announcing the lockdown in Jordan, Arab Islami Bank was ready for many scenarios, including business continuity, expected risks during the lockdown. As for the Central Bank of Jordan recommendations, the bank postponed retail financing installments during the lockdown without adding any profits or commissions to be on the postponed installments. The bank facilitated supply chain finance for basic goods during the lockdown, and this all was without any additional. This made a very clear, differentiation between how Islamic banks act and how conventional bank acted. This was a real differentiating factor. The bank, focused on something we called a new customer-friendly finance, which is offered post-lockdown financing at lower rates for real estate, cars, and more, targeting many segments, including veterans and government employees. Qard Hasan levels have increased astronomically in the bank. It doubled during 2020. Expansion in granting Qard Hasan for affected salaries client to cover contingencies. Installment of same cash price has also increased. Selling goods and services at the same cash price. We call it in Islamic ju'ala. Ju'ala meaning that you finance anything that the client buys at the same level without adding any interest or any profit. And this includes like electronics, furniture, and you name it. Also, the bank has increased the dependence on contactless and wireless networks, including contactless card, promoted placement of old cards, whoever has got with the contactless card, because we're trying to avoid contact, because the pandemic also tried to avoid this. Digital channels initiated new digital services to reduce transmission of the virus by reducing customer visit to branches, major revamping of the digital transfer platform to offer more services, instant deposit services through ATMs, promoting the use of payment gateways to pay bills and without having to move and go in person for this. This has extremely been a government initiative, which is called the Electronic Government Initiative of Jordan, and this has really proved to be extremely beneficial during the pandemic. A very important initiative by the central bank by the name IDAMA was a fund of 500 million Jordanian dinar, equivalent to $700 million, was given to banks for onward, providing to the SMEs for people who have been impacted by the pandemic, for the purpose of paying salaries and paying any amount of needed money for them to be able to sustain and not to close down. The Central Bank of Jordan initiated the COVID-19 Emergency Fund to provide free alternative source of fund accompanied with finance guarantee scheme for financing SME working capital, especially salaries occurred during the lockdown. In spite of the lockdown, IIAB, which is our bank, formed a task force for remotely develop a new Sharia-compliant financial solution to mobilize the Central Bank of Jordan's emergency fund to SMEs under the name IDAMA. IDAMA in Arabic means sustain. And IDAMA is a wakala al-istithmar-based solution that provides immediate finance to hundreds of SMEs to facilitate payments of salaries and buying working capital. We realized that IDAMA financing minimized employee layoffs and helped businesses to sustain themselves. Of course, IDAMA has lots of pillars. We have fund mobilization, Sharia compliant agreement with central bank and international organizations such as the World Bank to acquire low-cost funds for MSME subsidized financing, well-qualified team of required for capacity building to provide mentors, roles, and consultation. And you have the finance guarantee scheme from the loan guarantee company, which guarantees all those amounts. Basically, the bank will not take the risk on its own. It will be also having a third-party guarantee. Cooperation of specialized entities such sign the local global organization to provide proper technical assistance for those SMEs. The result was extremely massive. It was really good. The learned lessons from IDAMA was achieving a real positive impact on society and economy needs to accept higher risk than usual. The bank approved risky contracts such as Wakalat Istismar rather than Murabaha, regardless of foggy economic outlook during the COVID pandemic. IDAMA was a fruit of long-term cooperation with the central bank and the Loan Guarantee Corporation to provide the best financing to SMEs. And in Jordan, the harmony of IDAMA task force was crucial element to launch a new solution with no need for any physical face-to-face meeting. Of course, what we have seen after that, there was a major shift of the customer behavior, that's shifting. Due to COVID-19, surveys around the world showed the shifting in the customer behavior towards digital solutions faster than expected. Bank customers are more open to use alternative solutions as card, digital payments, online mobile banking instead of paper, phone, video advisory instead of physical meetings. And this meeting is an example of how we are using video conferencing for meetings. Global growth, online shopping, and wide acceptance of apps and growth of sharing economy. The digitalization challenge continues to be the major thing that banks should focus on. In our bank, we have launched end of this last month, our new mobile banking service, which gives basically more than 80% of the services customers want to need by visiting banks physically, and this will minimize the number of customers who have to come and accordingly minimize contacts. I think the future of this will be digitalization. Islamic banking also has the right to be also looked at as a very pioneering in digitalization. I don't think there is any reason to believe that this should not be the future. I had to just give you this sharing of our opinion and our case study. Hopefully, if there is any discussion and any question, I'll be ready to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ayad, for this interesting intervention. And definitely we'll come back to you if you have any other point raised by our participants or other panelists. So now if I can turn to Mr. Gonzalo to take his perspective on the innovation and technology, which is, of course, is another very important aspect. So that can be also key driving force if we see an economic recovery during the post-COVID-19 era. So, Mr. Gonzalo, in your opinion, what are the key trends of innovation and technology we have in the Mediterranean region overall? And also, if you can please share with us, how do you see Islamic finance can leverage these trends to penetrate in Mediterranean region? Please.
Thank you, Muhammad, for moderating the panel, and I would like to also thank you all the organizers, Tibafi, as always, for inviting me, Ascame, and also the Cambra of Barcelona. As the previous key speaker from ICD said, and also Brother Iyad said, that the pandemic has accelerated digitalization. This is a fact. So if we talk about innovation and technology and finance, we talk about fintech. And what is fintech? In my opinion, essentially it's just about to create tools to make finance easier to access. It's just that. Is it enable innovation in financial services? According to the Global Islamic Fintech Report provided by Diner Standards in 2029, is the last report we have, the Islamic Fintech transaction volume within the Organization of Islamic Cooperation countries is $49 billion. While this represents only 0.7% of the global fintech transaction volume, Islamic fintechs are projected to grow 128 billion to 2025 at 21% compound annual growth rate. And this is higher growth projection compared to conventional fintechs, projected at 15 CAGR for the same period. What does it mean? In my opinion, it means that there are future globally for Islamic finance and Islamic fintech. And let's see what's happening in the Mediterranean region. Focus on the Maghreb, which is the region we have more close in Spain. There is something that we call the Maghreb fintech paradox, because what we see is that there are a lot of fintech supporting factors. They have a very young population. They have digital-oriented population, relatively low financial inclusion, and high level of received remittances with high transfer costs. And let's see, also focusing in Morocco. Morocco is 37 from 64 in the report rating. Algeria, for example, is 46 from 64, or Turkey is the 21 from 64. And when I think Morocco could develop this industry, for example, Islamic finance, let's check some data, because what happened there could be extrapolated to other countries in the Mediterranean region. According to the World Bank Fintech's data, in Morocco, informal financing demand stands at 49% of formal demand, the second highest proportion in the region. The total financial need of the informal sector is over $21 billion. Morocco has a 29% banking rate compared to a much higher regional average, 44%, and it's even lower for women at 17%. Its Gini coefficient, a measure of inequality, as you know, from 0.1, where 1 is maximum inequality, is estimated at around 0.4 for above its neighbors. Regarding Algeria, for example, in Islamic finance, talking about Islamic finance, in August 2020, Algeria National Bank officially launched the Islamic finance services. As you know, at the end of January this year, the Algerian government has just presented also a draft to regulate takaful, the insurance industry in Islamic finance. These developments are part of a broader governmental policy to promote Islamic banking in the country. The declared objective is to integrate those sectors of the population still out of the banking sector and mobilize funds into the economic system from the informal market, with which Algeria Central Bank estimates that may amount to 30 to $35 billion. 42% population is over 15 years old, has an account, 29% made an active use, and just 2% made payments using a mobile phones or the internet. These numbers briefly resume a structural weakness. Financial gaps are significant, with even greater divides when gender and regional difference are taken into account. It is urgent to increase the SME finance scheme, but Morocco and the region have also some opportunities. Mobile internet accounted for around 93% of all internet connections. So, in my opinion, the combination between youth and technology usually signal the existence of an exploitable space for innovation. So what I think is that looking at the data, young population, low banking penetration, greater space for banking financing, and high rate of mobile penetration, Islamic banking must and can establish innovation. The Morocco Country Bill is a very good signal. The bill will make it easier for young entrepreneurs to innovate while strengthening Morocco's economy. This is the new one. And it will be great also to look to other realities, other countries. For example, in Malaysia, where my center, the Islamic Finance Center at IE Business School and the King Abdulaziz University from Saudi has some agreements with the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC. They had created like a Fintech booster, which is a capacity building program to assist Fintech companies to create a real ecosystem. I think this would be a very good idea. To increase Fintech in the region, we need three elements. Government, which is very important. We cannot be naive. We need more regulation. If you're dealing with money, the government must be involved. This is key. People, of course, we need the people, but we need educate the people. We need more education. This is another thing we are doing from our center. And start with the basics, what's haram, what's halal, and so on. And also to increase the entrepreneurship, to create a community of entrepreneurs, because there are a lot of potential in the region. And talking regarding the Islamic fintech opportunities and challenges, and just to finish with that, I see some opportunities and some challenges. The opportunities I have identified are that Islamic fintech companies can help the new startups in a big way. Islamic fintech companies can provide a wide range of innovative products and services. It also provides an option to the customers to use both traditional financial services as well as new and innovative services. It can provide cost-effective solution to the financial services, push the Islamic banks go digital, and provide financial services at a low cost. That's important. Islamic fintech also is transparent, accessible, and easy to use, so can increase the customer confidence to the banks. And finally, can also increase the confidence of Muslim investors as it is in accordance with Sharia. So it's always important to attract money from the Gulf, for example. But there are some challenges. Lack of good research and trained human personnel. This is what we are trying to do from our center. Islamic fintech needs to keep itself at pace with the rapid development going in the conventional finance world, because if not, it's going to be a big gap between the regular banks and Islamic banks. And since Islamic fintech is still new, investors are not able to make sure how much investments are worth investing. So that's just my thoughts by that moment. And if you have any question, please let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalo. These are very interesting and fascinating points, I would say, highlighted by you. And they really tell us how important is innovation and technology for Islamic financial institutions if they really want to grow further and to penetrate in countries in the Mediterranean regions. For example, we have named Morocco, Algeria, and Spain. And on fintech, definitely we will talk about more on this fintech and the challenges and opportunities when we'll listen to Mr. Hassan, who is managing a fintech company, Insha Ventures in Turkey. But before that, another area that has got a lot of attention during the COVID-19 pandemic is, of course, the sustainable and social finance and their role in alleviating the pandemic effects. So my next question is for Mr. Nabil, who is managing an Islamic microfinance institution in Tunisia. Mr. Nabil, please share with us your experience on the sustainable and social finance initiative by your institution that are helping to alleviate the pandemic effects in the country. And also please share with us, how do you plan to take forward this momentum in the post-COVID-19 era?
Thank you, brother Bilal. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all fine and safe. I'm very glad to be a part of the 6th Mediterranean Islamic Finance Forum, and I thank Sibafi for this invitation. I am Nabil Kasrawi, the General Manager of Zitouna Tamkeen, the first and the unique Islamic microfinance institution in Tunisia and in North Africa, and the unique model of Islamic microfinance. Zitouna Tamkeen is the first and the unique Tunisian microfinance institution following the principles of Islamic financing, implemented in 19 different regions in the territory and adopting the Murabaha process to serve and finance the local SMEs since 2017. Our institution transcends the traditional individual financing solutions and develop the economic empowerment approach, an innovative approach that focuses on building projects around value chains in partnership with responsible private sector actors to facilitate access to market and support its beneficiaries via non-financial services like building capacities, negotiating with supplier, smart partnership with off-taker, investment opportunities, either the appropriate financement as a financial services. So we are offering a packaged, innovative offer contributing directly to the economic inclusion of the poor population. When it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic effects on the real economy and the response of the Islamic finance industry, we witnessed several effects on the economic tissue around the world, especially the vulnerable SMEs. In fact, fear of contagion and imposed curfew inflicted direct damage to the SMEs. For example, in the commercial sector, in the agricultural sector, COVID crisis caused a massive decrease on the market demand, fall in sales and decline in orders, cash flow problem, and deeper problems on the supplying level. The pandemic drove many SMEs to shut down permanently or lower the staff member, which lead to the aggravation of the unemployment rates. As a response, Zitouna Tamkeen, a key player of the local microfinance sector and fundamental actor of the Islamic finance industry, respond to help the local SMEs, the most fragile economic actor who suffered from the highest impact. The institution made several decisions in favor of its clients in 2020, such as 1, the postponement of installment with non-application of a margin increase in accordance with a decision from the Sharia Board Committee, unlike the rest of the microfinance institution that applied a carryover rate of 11%. Number 2, study the needs for financing adapted to the context of the crisis and accord additional financing loans to relaunch the activities of post-crisis client financing with favorable condition in terms of grace period and in terms of amount. Concerning the role of the sustainable and social finance in alleviating the pandemic effect, positive outcome of the made decision has been confirmed. For instance, young entrepreneur appreciated the supporting aspect of the Islamic finance value towards their SMEs during the crisis. Things were different with conventional banking and conventional microfinance institution client who endured extra fees for applied carryover despite their critical situation. Preserving the weak link in the economy industry requires, like say Dr. Sejini of ICD, requires being supported by the key player of Islamic financial industry for Zitouna Tamkeen. As a solution, Islamic funds donors, Islamic NGOs, and International Islamic Investments Bank can offer efficient solution throughout Waqf funds or Sanadiq al-Zakat or Sanadiq al-Sadaqa to finance intermediate economy actor like Islamic microfinance institution tooled with required know-how to help and support the fragile link of the economic tissue but lack fund and necessarily cash flow. For the next step, Zitouna Tamkeen intend in 2021 to launch the Qard Hassan as a supporting non-lucrative product in the benefit of the most impacted project in this crisis or in the future crisis to help them recover and resume their former activities. To ensure the success of this project, our institution need the support of the international Islamic funds and donor throughout dedicated funding line. The positive impact of such support will be immediately observed on the undamaged SMEs and the employment stability they secure. Our post-pandemic experience proved that innovation and technology are the key driving force for Islamic finance penetration within the Mediterranean region. A fundamental pillar of the economic empowerment approach adopted by Zitouna Tamkeen is to ensure the sustainability of micro project and long-term job in vulnerable sectors in the rural area, such as agriculture. On the other hand, several handicaps are challenging the implementation of this project, such as the need for digitalization to facilitate the access to the Islamic financial product and lightening the heavy financing process and transactional cost for the beneficiary. Steps were made as providing digital payment services and facilitating access to accurate information via social media, but bigger project like digitalization of Murabaha process need bigger resource and more research and development effort. In conclusion, Zitouna Tamkeen is open to national and international stakeholders with its value possibility to achieve financial and economic inclusion in Tunisia, which is the key enabler to reducing poverty and boosting prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nabil, for sharing your insightful experience in your institution. So now if I can invite Mr. Hassan to please share his insights on the key challenges, opportunities, and growth prospects of Islamic finance in the Mediterranean region, and also based on your experience in Insha Ventures, as all our participants, they are talking about the fintech, the importance of fintech and innovation. So what do you think about the possible role of fintech in the future growth of the Islamic finance industry in Turkey, and also on a larger picture, which we talk about Mediterranean region? Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Bilal. Thank you so much for the other panel speakers. I would like to convey our warm greetings and love from magnificent Istanbul to all stakeholders participating in this valuable organization. And I hope, as Mr. Nabil said, I hope you are all in good position in health while we are living the COVID-19 pandemics. And also I would like to thank the CBAFI, the Association Chambers of Commerce and Industry of the Mediterranean, and the Barcelona Chambers of Commerce, and a special thanks to technical team. I would like to thank because of their efforts, we are now here. When we come to your question, before your question, I would like to clarify. Insha Ventures is a subsidiary of Al Baraka Turk, which is, you already know, Al Baraka Turk is another subsidiary of Al Baraka Banking Group. So we are basically located in Istanbul, but we have our products and services in also Europe, in Mediterranean. We will be later on in Mediterranean area, in Italy, in Spain, in 2022. We believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has forced people to access financial services. We were confined to home and couldn't access the bank branches, financial services points. We could even do not pay the bills because many of them were locked in the houses. So while this pandemic has reduced our access to financial services, which is the main source of economical developments, as many of the panel speakers mentioned, the innovation is the key access for accelerating people to reach financial services. As you already know, innovation advises us to think in different ways. We basically in Istanbul, as Al Baraka Turkey, as Insha Ventures, we believe that there are tons of different ways, but the COVID-19 pandemic has brought a new way of thinking to our minds. What if all people locked at home, trying to having financial services? Then fintech products is the answer. Actually, we believe like that. So while starting from the pandemic, we started to think in a way, and we believe the sector also started to think in a way, if the world is being created with many technological possibilities again, in our hands. What if we could design all financial services and end-to-end products with new technologies? From customer acquisition process to new way of marketing, digital marketing, from product development process to customer and complaint management process. We have already realized once again how technological developments have actually made our lives easier in all aspects. While redesigning financial products and services, we also had to reshape the delivery of these products and services to customers and end user and the all participants of the society. Example, for giving examples, we are talking about branchless banking models. Actually, they have developed considerably in the last decades. And we are now talking about hundreds of digital banks competing each other, especially in Europe. And Islamic finance, Islamic digital banks has catch up this competitivity. So we believe that this pandemic has fastened our financial and services, Islamic financial services, to compete in the conventional banking sector. We also have become increasingly familiar with e-money and cryptocurrencies. Those affected people, more than influencing people's view of digital financial services, people are almost dizzy with the recent developments, actually. Digital banking, open banking, payment systems, collections, crowdfunding, blockchain, etc. These technological developments expedites the transaction in many different sectors, as some of the panel speakers has mentioned about the sectors. Especially in financial sector, technology not only make easier the processes, also put a new security layers on the financial transaction to secure people's and corporates' investments. In Turkey and Europe, we are trying to develop our financial technology products, and we are trying to develop a financial ecosystem via our competitive. Lastly, I use the words competition and cooperation. We put words together, and we are working competition words in Turkey, actually, via our both Islamic finance institution to create more value, to tell our difference and our especially not the difference, our nature of the Islamic finance natures to all participants of the financial ecosystem. We put the people's feelings in the center of, we are all humankind, not Muslim, not non-Muslim. There are many of religion, as you know. So in the center, we are all humankind, and the Islam put a sense of the nature of Islam in the center. So we believe that the financial technologies with a perspective to feeling all humankind what they need, what they have in their hands. Although we have cultural differences as people living on the same planet, we have the same nature in terms of access to financial products and services and sustainability. That's why we think that it's very important to provide equal services to people and digitalized world, in the digitalized world, regardless of the country or region, with the same quality and the same human feelings. So our perspective, our thoughts, our feelings in this sector, with a different way of thinking actually here, because we approach this discussion in a different way, maybe emotionally, but as many of the panel speakers here in the field, we are also in the field to touch end users, customers, and we are speaking with them, and we feel their feelings. So we developed our ideas via their feelings. From a technology and digitalization perspective, recent developments actually give us hope in terms of sustainability, resilience, and accessibility to all financial services. As Dr. Bridget mentioned, those impact will be on the layers of society around the world, not just for Muslim people, actually. On the other hand, as Mr. Iyad mentioned about some Islamic finance terms and notions, I couldn't remember the exact words, but those terms, Islamic finance terms, actually nature of Islam, so nature of being, well-being. So now technology is now able to put those terms and notions, concepts, and their benefits to all society. For start, my thoughts are like that, but just a quick close-up. We are actually able to do this. We believe that, but we think we need strong collaborations in which all stakeholders will be involved in some way. As I mentioned, competition, frequently we use the words, more patient and we need to be more patient and determined to persuade people and stakeholders to produce together, come together. Also, it's very important for creating ecosystem of fintech, digitalization, and fintech sector and digitalization of financial institution. Thank you so much, and I'll expect your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan, for sharing these very interesting insights. And I believe what you have highlighted here goes very much in line with the opinion of Mr. Gonzalo. Indeed, there is a huge potential for Islamic finance industry to leverage on the offering opportunities like fintech, as they have rightly mentioned, that can help Islamic financial institutions to grow and increase or expand their customer base to attract new customers in the Mediterranean region. But here I want to ask you about the challenges in specific when we talk about fintech, and also if you can highlight on Islamic fintech, like when you say that you are promoting fintech in the region. So are you facing any challenges in particular to Islamic fintech?
Question to me? Sorry, I missed that.
Yes, yeah. That is for you.
Yeah, of course. To give an example, actually, there is a payment method, especially only used in Turkey, promissory notes. Maybe you know that. We use promissory notes as a payment method in Turkey. You sign a document on a paper, especially it's very historical payment method, but in Turkey we use it for the last maybe 100 years. You sign a document and you put your debt on the paper. You give that paper to your debt owner. This is this is processed in papers. While we try to digitalize this process, we are mainly conflict with 8 different Turkish regulations, 8 different laws. So when we went to authority of Turkish Trade Ministry, they obliged us to offer our new regulatory. They give us a homework to write the regulation of this process. So we are trying to digitalize this process for 3 years. But actually, the technological developments has the minimum part of this improvement. We have only spent 3 or 4 months to accelerate the business, but we are facing actually difficulties in persuading the Minister of Trade and Turkish authorities for 2 years, more than technological development process. So this is an example for us to challenge with Turkish authority and other authorities. In Europe also we have some challenges to convince the Belgium authority, German authority to accelerate our business and services, waiting to customers waiting for us. These are the examples, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Asif, for providing us all these insights and examples. So now actually I want to ask Dr. Bridget to share her views on sustainable and social finance. Dr. Bridget, since you have a vast experience working on various microfinance projects, including Islamic microfinance in South Asia, Middle East, and Europe. So I want to ask you, what do you think about the lessons we can learn from other regions in this regard, and how to achieve Islamic finance goals in the Mediterranean region? Please.
Thank you. And Mr. Hassan, I love everything that you just said, and I'll be referring to it because it answers this question and it speaks to it. So what do I mean by that? Post-COVID, if we're talking about Islamic finance in a post-COVID world, there's two main issues that we're actually talking about. One is supporting businesses and national economic systems that have suffered. And then the second is helping people, the poor, those who are suffering in new ways that perhaps they were not prepared for because of the extraordinary nature of this pandemic, as Mr. Nabil was discussing. Now, when thinking about Islamic finance's unique ability to meet this second challenge, the challenge of people, there's some obvious possibilities that have been mentioned so far. Islamic microfinance, the ability to manage and channel zakat, sadaqah at scale, and of course, Islamic Fintech, digital Islamic banking to increase financial inclusion and leverage technology to meet the unique needs of suffering populations. But I'm an anthropologist, and so I can appreciate this makes me an interesting inclusion to this panel. Because my relationship to Islamic finance was an on-the-ground one. So for nearly 2 years, I lived amongst poor women in a slum area in rural Bangladesh to understand how they understood their engagement with Islamic finance and why they were even using it. Now, why does this matter? Why does this rural Bangladeshi experience have relevance for this conversation about the Mediterranean region? Well, I would say it matters because when I was finishing up this work in 2014, approximately 25% of the entire world's retail Islamic finance customers were with one single bank. Now, was it in Malaysia? Was it in Saudi Arabia, elsewhere in the GCC? No, 25% of the world's retail Islamic finance clients were with the Islami Bank Bangladesh Limited. Now, this region where these women were living, where I was living with them, it was saturated by microfinance providers. These women had lots of options to access financing. Bangladesh is a small country. Microfinance has been around for ages. Muhammad Yunus, the Grameen Bank, got its start in Bangladesh, of course. Now, to the Islami Bank Bangladesh, the value add of their service provision was that it was Sharia compliant. Right? They were offering Sharia compliant services to their customers. But I found something on the ground living amongst these women that was totally surprising and actually completely opposite to what the Islamic Bank was saying was their value add. Now, with respect to the commonly used bimuajil contract that was used for Islamic microfinancing in this area to purchase sewing machines, refrigerators, cows, these sorts of material items that could be used for small income generation, non-compliance was widespread because, as is typical with microfinance, the women were actually using the cash to smooth over their daily household expenses. They weren't actually buying the sewing machine or the refrigerator or the cow. So this was non-compliant. And yet, these women found their whole encounter with the Islami Bank deeply Islamic as compared to the other microfinance providers that they were using. Why is this? It's because they were treated with respect in each encounter. And because the field officer that they liaised with, this was their primary point of contact when they made the repayments, he actually allowed them to submit late repayments without any kind of penalty. Non-compliant, non-compliant, non-compliant. In other words, the Islamicness for them was related to something totally other than Sharia compliance. It was ultimately about the corporate culture of the bank that was strong enough to filter down even to the field officer level to make that individual uniquely accommodating toward these women's hardships, giving them an extra bit of service provision, as Mr. Hassan was saying, really focusing on the feelings of their clients. Now, I can appreciate that this is difficult to replicate at scale. But when we're talking about Islamic finance as a growth sector within the Mediterranean region, because it isn't as some of the banks, some of the service provision won't be as old as in other parts of the world, this is a massive opportunity to not just think about products or services that can meet the needs, but about why the corporate culture matters as well. Because again, zooming back out to the anthropological scale of consideration here, right? Not the sort of financial or economist's much more granular view of things. If, to extrapolate, arguably 25% of the world's retail Islamic finance clients are deeply invested in the corporate culture of the bank, the challenge for banks is, are they meeting that need of their clients? Are they putting forth a corporate culture, not just products and services, but the delivery of them that matches the sort of religious expectations of their client base? This is why I think it's a really productive challenge to consider, as Mr. Hassan was saying, to start with the clients and understand their experience rather than only focusing on a product level innovation point of view, right? Both are necessary, but we don't want the clients to get lost in this either.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bridget. Indeed, when you're giving your first-hand experience, things become very crystal clear. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed your example. So, but talking about the challenges, because we are talking about COVID-19, post-COVID-19 era in the Mediterranean, how Islamic finance can contribute to economic recovery and sustainability and all that. So in your opinion, how do you see the challenges are different when we talk about other regions? Yeah, you were giving example of South Asia, of Bangladesh. So when we talk about another country in Mediterranean region, say like Morocco or Algeria or Spain, any other country. So how do you see the challenges are different when we are going to see the post-COVID-19 era?
So post-COVID, there are a lot of people who would have identified as middle class, been very invested in that status, who for various reasons are now technically, economically, no longer middle class. They have fallen, they are poor. It is a human challenge to understand how to get these people to accept something like Kordi Hassan, that before for them would have been seen as something for poor people, not for them, right? They're middle class.
Right.
And yet this might actually be incredibly useful to them in this time of need. Right. So post-COVID, the people who are suffering the most, there are issues of self-identity, right? There's issues of marketing here, of products that might be seen as not being for them. People who maybe would have never thought of themselves as appropriate recipients of zakat. Is there a way to somehow use the scaffolding of a financial institution to channel resources to populations who, to be really frank, might be ashamed to accept them? So this goes back to corporate culture, this goes back to communications, this goes back to marketing, the whole sort of softer side. Is there a way in which the anonymity of Islamic fintech preserves the dignity of end users in a way that can allow them to access certain services? If that's the case, then it actually means that digital offerings should zoom to the top of the priority list, because people then who are suffering in ways they were not before, right? This is so recent. It's only been a year and a half. And so people haven't had time to adjust to their own sense of, who they are and what they need. So this is where I think the anthropological human side meets the service delivery side.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Bridget. I really appreciate that. Now we have another, I think, 10 to 12 minutes. So my idea is like if all of the distinguished speakers, one by one, they can conclude or they can give a message like how do they see the future prospects, the growth prospects of Islamic finance in the region. I would like to start with Mr. Gonzalo, please. If you can take 2 minutes to sum up.
Well, I wanted to add just a reflection, because while my colleagues were talking, this regarding to Islamic fintech is how important is this personal touch that Bridget was talking before. It's true. And something that I have seen here in Europe, not only in Islamic fintech, but in fintech in general, is we can see an opportunity to attract young people. This is obviously, and is a great opportunity to increase the attraction of Islamic finance through this new generation, the Z generation, and so on. But what I see is also a risk, and is maybe this digitalization can we have the risk to lose some people, old people, because they cannot, they don't know how to use the digital tools and the new system bankings. I think Dr. Hassan was talking before about the branchless banking model. This is great. It's an opportunity for the banks. For me, it's great because I'm using my iPhone for all my financial needs. But what happened with my grandmother? She doesn't understand that. So I see myself helping her all time just to see her account in the bank. So this is also an important risk that we must to balance this reality. And regarding the future of Islamic banking in Europe, I for example in Spain, it's going to be challenging. Okay, but there are some opportunities. I think we can continue to trying to convince the government to help the industry to settle down here, and I think this will be very good for our country, and also for the Muslim population we have in Spain and in other parts of Europe, that some of them are out of the system because of their religious beliefs, and I think this is not good for anybody.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gonzalo. I will request Mr. Hassan to please take 2 minutes and briefly sum up.
Thank you so much. Actually, I believe that financial technologies and digital products will not only diversify financial services, but also diversify many sectors such as production, agriculture, health. These industries ultimately affect our daily lives. As many of the panel speakers highlighted that the economical effects of all these sectors, the financial technological developments will not only, as I mentioned, will be serving to the all part of the economy. On the other hand, I believe people at home emotionally affected to be able to come together after the restriction has canceled. People started to emphasize empathy more. This might be an advantage for us to come together to, as the part of the financial services producers and servants. I think this is an opportunity for us. And I would like to thank all panel speakers for their precious ideas and thoughts. And I learned too much today, actually. There are many bright ideas and discussion points to create more. I hope in the future we can come together and come closer to discuss our future agenda together. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hassan. And now I would request Mr. Ayad to please sum up.
Thank you. Just closing remarks about this issue. Throughout the pandemic, Islamic banking proved to be resilient because it's very close or related to real economy. I think this proved that it is, was also friendly to its customers. The fact that, as I also highlighted, and Mr. Nabil also has highlighted, the fact that you deal with your customers in a passionate way, try to take care of their needs away from excessive riba, has proved to be the way forward, particularly for the SME segment and for the retail segment. The third thing is now where the digitalization was something good to have, it has become imminent, it has become a necessity, and customer, orientation and trying to drive the customer behavior to accept it has become a very big and important necessity. And maybe we will ask IOFI to look at digitalization and try to look at standards and look to deal with how those products and services. In fact, I'm trying to Mr. Hassan was asking me, I'm talking about Juala. Juala is selling at the same cash price, and you have the Qard Hassan, and you have Murabaha, and you have Ijara, and you have Salam, and you have Istisna. All those are products which are also Islamically related. And accordingly, I think with the digitalization, it's extremely important for the IOFI to look at digitalization and how those products can be dealt with in a more digitized manner, and also preserve the Sharia compliant aspect of those products.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayad. I really appreciate it. And now I will request Mr. Nabil to please take 2 minutes and please briefly talk about the future prospect of Islamic finance in the Mediterranean.
Thank you, Dr. Bilal. In this context, I want to mention that the Islamic microfinance institution challenges, like said all the speaker, one needs for digitalization of the process within the respect of the Sharia. And like I say, that we can integrate the fund of zakat in the system, and microfinance and zakat can go together, and we can develop a crowdfunding based on zakat to support Islamic microfinance institution, to support their client affected by crisis COVID or other crises. We know that in Quran, Allah says that وَإِن كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسُرَةٍ. So actually, in microfinance, we have a huge number of clients affected by not crisis, but by economic difficulty. So we can develop a fund, and this fund can be alimented by donors who has zakat to pay on a platform like crowdfunding based on zakat, and this crowdfunding can support microfinance to support this client. Number two, access to difficult rural area non-covered by the banks, and convincing the poor population in the pertinence of Murabaha process in order to prevent the misappropriation of funds. All these challenges can be resolved by the collaboration of all of the stakeholders in the ecosystem, in Islamic ecosystem. Thank you. And once again.
Thank you, Mr. Nabil. And now I will request Dr. Bridget to please sum up. And how do you see the future of Islamic finance in the region? And are we on the right track? Please.
That's a big final question. Well, the answer is yes, on the right track. Absolutely. I think we've heard today from institutions that are doing incredible work in very sensitive ways, attentive to the need for innovation, evolutions in their products and service delivery, but also aware of the, cultural, spiritual, humanistic challenges that COVID has brought about, where everyone's situations changed so rapidly and in ways they couldn't have anticipated. So before this session, I was looking at at how this panel fit into the broader picture of this week-long event for the Mediterranean region. And it really struck me as wonderfully insightful on the part of the organizers, because everything else was very sort of, I guess, standard, typical, sport, economy, these non-controversial topics. And I think the goal here is to not have Islamic finance be seen as niche, right? It's been niche in many ways for decades. And the goal is to standardize it, to normalize it, to have non-Muslims like myself understand that this is where we want our money to be, because it aligns with our values as humans. And right. So I think that this is, my congratulations to the organizers for doing their part to make Islamic finance for the Mediterranean region mainstream, not just because Mediterranean countries aren't all necessarily Muslim majority, but because Islamic finance is also finding a home in other countries in Africa and South Asia, where they are multi-religious as well. And so there's nothing but opportunity moving forward from my vantage point, and it's been a pleasure to learn from the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bridget. Thank you to all dear distinguished speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the 6th Mediterranean Islamic Finance Forum. CBAFI, SKMA, and the Barcelona Chamber of Commerce would like to thank you for your active participation in this forum, and we definitely look forward to seeing you again in our future events. Thank you and stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa
Alaikum
barakatuh.
assalam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad.